So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Georgia O'Brien and I'm the head of comms and digital at the Co-op Party. And welcome to this edition of our Cooperative Party live online meetings. And today we're going to be talking about the future of the co-op economy. So we've got some brilliant speakers here with us today. But just before I kick off and do some introductions, just a little bit of housekeeping. So this Zoom is being recorded to be put on our YouTube channel for other people to watch in the future. So if you don't want to appear on video, please make sure that your video is switched off. Everybody who's come in has been muted just to make it a little bit easier, so that no one's background noise interrupts any speakers, and that when we do Q&As at the end, you'll have the opportunity either to raise your hand to ask a question, or you can send your questions into me in the chat box, and I'm happy to read those out for you as well if you prefer not to appear on camera. So with no further ado, I'm going to kick off. So today's session is a really important one because it's the focus of this year's member-led policy process. One of them, with the other one being on inequalities. And what we will be talking about is some of the as we're moving forward and as we've got a lot of innovation and technological advances, we want to think about how the cooperative movement can be ready to leave and ready to adapt and ready to make the most of what our future economy will look like. So this event is going to explore how co-op models can harness these emerging technologies for the common good and creating democratic platforms that empower workers and consumers. And we're going to hear directly from a tech cooperative on how they're developing. We're going to hear from experts from the field, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about what we as a movement can do to harness this, both within the movement and also politically as well. So today we're going to be hearing from Rose Marley, who is the CEO of Co-operatives UK, Patrick Hurley MP, who is the Labour Member of Parliament for Southport, and Richard Edwards, who is a co-owner and worker at Outlandish Co-op. So to start off, we're going to be hearing a little bit from Rose. So don't want to hear any more from me. Take it away, Rose.
Thank you very much, Georgia, and thank you for inviting me to speak today. I've been specifically asked to speak about two areas of cooperatives, which I believe are somewhat underrated, and they're both passions of mine. So one is tech and platform co-ops, and the other is freelancing. So I do have some slides. So let me just share my slides with you. And if anyone can let me know that if they can't see the slides, I just need to, move my bar. I think you've not got the right view there. Is that right? They're not in presentation mode.
Not in presentation mode, but we can see them.
Okay.
Looks like it's loading.
Okay. Lovely, fabulous. So yeah, I believe these two areas of cooperation are underrated and will form a significant part of the future if we empower and enable. So I'm going to talk first of all about platform co-ops, and as all of you know, a co-op is any form of business that is collectively owned and democratically controlled by its members. But in a platform co-op, in very simple terms, it's the actual tech, it's the app itself that is the co-op. So we're all familiar with Airbnb. Well, the European ethical and cooperative response to that, you can see in the bottom of the screen there, Airbnb. Not only is it part of what's known as the sharing economy, where you get to share your house or somebody else's house, but let's say in a platform cooperative, you are also an owner of the tech that delivers that experience for the consumer and the renter. And what's important about that in terms of platform co-ops is that we've seen so sadly illustrated over the past couple of years the ownership and monopolisation of technology, and what that does to everything from you know, algorithms of hate through to exploitation and monopolisation of data, through to exploitation of work practices with platform co-ops. So it really does sing to one of societal's issues, and that's what cooperatives do really, really well. And just a couple of
just to dive in, Rose, very ironically, given the topic of conversation we're having, I don't think your slides are moving on. Just so you're aware, maybe we really need to make Microsoft into a co-op so that we can get
right, okay. If they're not moving on, okay.
Yeah.
That is.
Oh, I can ask your notes.
No. Okay, I'll go like this. Yeah, can you see those okay?
Yeah,
so that's where I was.
Working. There we go, that'll do.
So it's not full screen.
I'll let you continue.
Sorry. Thank you, Georgia. So like I say, collectively owned and democratically controlled, and there, like I say, is FAIR, B and B, alongside some of the platform cooperatives that we've worked here at Co-operatives UK on. So we've got our Equal Care Cooperative, which delivers domiciliary care based out of Yorkshire, and they've created an app, in effect, that allows beneficiaries of the care alongside with deliverers of the care and the commissioners of the care to get more efficient care through their platform co-op. So part of the technology is part of the solution. So they manage to pay their care workers £18 to £21 an hour, including travel. They have a lot lower turnover of staff, and they have a lot more happy beneficiaries. Charlton bag deliveries are part of Co-op cycle, which is, you see this a lot in tech, like you have a kind of global local response where the global technology might be created and it's almost like tech franchising. So like say in Manchester, Co-op cycle is known as Charlton bike deliveries, but in London, for example, Islington, it was Wings in the pandemic. So that's a kind of a little bit of a whistle stop around platform cooperatives and what they do. The platform co-ops in the UK, quite a lot of the sort of more high profile ones like Equal Care Co-op have come through the Unfound Accelerator, which Cooperatives UK were able to fund through our work with the Cooperative Bank. So as well as Equal Care Co-op, for example, Signalise, which is a platform co-op for deaf people and BSL translators, Red Brick Language School, a school run and owned by teachers, and DOPO is focused on abortion care and education. The one thing I would say about platform co-ops not realising their true potential, the big challenge with platform co-ops is that, as I'm sure you're aware, platforms themselves are normally funded through venture capital funding, and venture capital funding doesn't sit well with cooperatives for many reasons. So there's a real capital raising issue around platform co-ops. So the likes of Equal Care and Signalise have had to do this through community shares offers, which is hard and challenging in its own right. So there's a major opportunity to respond more effectively to societal issues around tech, but the fundraising is an issue. For those of you coming to Co-op Congress this year on the 4th of July in Rochdale, we are presenting this provocation, and we are doing a session on it, because I really do believe this is where we could focus a lot of our attention. And then with regards to freelancer co-ops, again, I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity at the moment. The gig economy is seen as a very negative experience, not least because of the exploitation of the gig economy and things like retail and care work. I do come out of the music and entertainment business, so I say we're the OGs, we're the original gig economy, freelancers. And I can tell you about all sorts of peers, you know, that have got really high performing jobs and roles, but they've got no pensions, and they have patchy income because, you know, the gig economy, the original gig economy where you paid for every gig, which is why the creative industries lends itself well to that, is not underpinned with any of that balance of whether it's, you know, managing your cash flow or being able to access a mortgage. that needs addressing. Now, the benefits of a cooperative for freelancers that you can come together and maybe tackle some of those things. So sharing costs, skills, being able to access fair and more decent work by combining your joint efforts, sharing creative ideas, increasing efficiencies. But I also, like I say, believe that we need to enable the gig economy for freelancers in its own right, and underpin it with ethics and allow people to work when they want and how they want and have those portfolio careers. And again, the cooperative model is a really exciting opportunity for that. So we're doing significant work at the moment in the West Midlands with the Ownership Hub, where we've got a team there led by Jo End, who you can see. And it's a 2-year project where we support freelancers farming cooperatives. For example, the Dance Cooperative of Birmingham has been working with us through this route with is founded in 2024, and the aim is for freelance dance artists to lead on dance within Birmingham with one voice. And then we also have, I mean, we've got Outlandish here, so you're going to hear all about tech cooperatives, but Autonomic, another example of freelancers coming together and working together to enable a better opportunity and future for all. It does lend itself well to creatives because, like I say, creatives tend to get gig style work anyway. So being able to band together as a cooperative, as a worker cooperative is predominantly where we see the freelancers coming together. Interestingly, Tracy Brabin started out in a cooperative, an actors cooperative, and we see this quite a lot where we've got a comedy cooperative up in the northeast, and actually representing each other. So it's very difficult to negotiate your contract for yourself and tell somebody why you should be paid more. It's a lot easier to do it for somebody else. So some of the benefits of the way freelancers are using this model is really, really strong. And we've got an evaluation report coming out from the West Midlands at the end of the year, which will include the likes as well of the Midlands African Heritage Collaborative Network that have used the opportunity to come together and form a cooperative from there. There is a business support programme for people to work out whether a cooperative is right for them, and you can find out more about that on our website. But yeah, I'd say the main things I really, really wanted to say was that both the opportunity, the economic opportunity that is currently presented as a challenge, which is, for things like, for example, automation and AI. If we actually looked at those as solutions and opportunities, you come out with a very different response. And that's what my recommendation would be for the cooperative movement, to start harnessing some of the opportunities that we've got in platform and freelance co-ops to solve some of those economic challenges that are currently presenting in the UK and across the world. Thank you very much.
Amazing, thank you so much. So next I'm going to bring on our next speaker, who is Patrick Hurley MP, who is the Labour Member of Parliament for Southport, but prior to being in Parliament also worked in the promotion of co-ops and social enterprises. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, thanks, Georgia. So I'm Patrick. I'm Member of Parliament for Southport since July of last year. I also chair the incredibly long title of the APPG for Social, Cooperative and Community Economy. You can always tell when these things have been designed by committee, can't you, that we couldn't really narrow it down. So we've called it the Social, Cooperative and Community Economy, which essentially just means the co-op economy and all of the different business structures that kind of share an affinity with the co-op sector. George is right. Before I was elected in July, I'd spent well over a decade working with co-ops and with social enterprises to help people to set up and to grow their own co-ops and to make sure that they were on a sustainable footing. And it's with that in mind that I think I'm going to be speaking for the next few minutes on what kind of the lessons learned from a lot of successes but also candidly a lot of failures along the way, and you know, not kind of put too much of a fine point on it. You know, it's not all easy going when you're running a co-op, and as I'm sure a lot of people know, it's just as difficult as anything else, but also just as rewarding as it can be. So yeah, one of the things I've been asked to speak about is why it's important for government to target co-ops. And you may be aware that the government came into office in July with a manifesto commitment to double the size of the cooperative and the mutual sector. And we're on track to do that. And as chair of the all-party group for cooperative economy, we're playing our part as well. We've got an inquiry underway currently to make sure that we make recommendations to government later on in the summer around business structures for co-ops, to make sure that the structures that we've currently got, whether to see whether they're fit for purpose, to see whether the funding regimes in the country are a good fit for the Companies Act that we've got and the legislative background that underpins the co-ops and mutual sector. And so that should be published, we're thinking July, August, and then hopefully that goes to ministers and make recommendations. And as long as the ministers have got their heads screwed on right, we should be looking to hopefully see them take on board our recommendations with a view to expanding and doubling the size of the co-op economy over the coming years. Rose mentioned about platform co-ops, and I'll be honest here, platform co-ops, they are, you know, just like every other cooperative, it's an incredibly difficult thing for people to run as well as you do your day job. But there's a huge opportunity here. There's a once in a generation opportunity, as far as I can tell. There's a lot of new industries coming through when it comes to tech. So you've got clean green technologies for energy generation. We've heard a lot in recent months about the possibilities and the potential of AI. We've also got the traditional platform co-ops, which, you know, have taken the gig economy model and turned it on its head. Because for me, this is all about power imbalances. Because if you're a gig economy worker earning in many cases really low wages, well, whereas you're seeing that your company CEO is earning the big bucks, it's the power differential there and the ability to leverage that to your advantage. And I think that really shows the power of being set up as a cooperative, especially for the platform co-ops. One of the things that Rose also mentioned there is around the capitalisation of cooperatives, specifically in that tech sector. They don't lend themselves well to private equity backing. They don't lend themselves well to the traditional capitalisation from the private sector. Community shares are, in my opinion, a pretty poor relation at this stage. From personal experience working with a lot of groups over the years, they are difficult things to navigate, difficult things to get right. There's a lot of regulations and a lot of difficulties for people to get their head around, and of course, it's almost public subscription as well, which is, you know, it's not the easiest thing to do at the best of times. So, to be frank, I think it's on myself as a parliamentarian, it's on the Labour government to develop feasible alternatives that are more accessible, that are sustainable and better reflect the value of co-ops. Because, you know, we can remove those barriers to raising funding for co-ops, and that will assist with the manifesto commitments. I want to talk as well a little bit about my own personal involvement in setting co-ops up, because I've brought into Parliament with me a lot of background around the cooperative movement from personal experience and from professional experience. And what I didn't want to do is just leave that and lose that once I got down into Westminster. So in my own constituency in Southport, in August last year, the town's much loved independent bookshop closed down after 120 years in the town centre. And people came to me and said, well, you're the MP, do something. you know, what do you do as the MP when the bookshop closes? Well, I decided to put the call out to see if anybody would be interested in setting up a cooperative bookshop to take its place. And so in October last year, we had a public meeting with about 100 people or so at the local market hall, where we got expressions of interest from members of the public to say would they be interested in exploring some of the options around setting up a co-op to take over, not take over the premises, but to take over the feasibility and the ethos of the bookshop that had closed. And we did. We had a steering committee of about 12 people who, for about 4 or 5 months, went through all of the ups and downs and the figures and the business plans and the medium-term financial forecasts. And they decided ultimately that this is not something that would be a feasible option. And I'll be candid, on the one hand, this was a disappointment, but I think that it was the right decision to make, because at that stage, you know, you don't want people setting up with all the enthusiasm in the world, all the ambition in the world, and then 6 months down the line, they've devoted so much attention, so much work to it, and then they've realised that the market demand isn't there. And so I think that although it was disappointing, it's a success when people realise that this is not something that's got a feasible chance of success. So many times over the years, I've worked with groups that haven't had that level of self-awareness, and they've plodded on and plodded on for far too long. And I'll give you one more example of one of those people that plodded on and plodded on for far too long, doing something that didn't work, and that's myself. Because I've got a prop. I'll show you this prop. So this prop is the Co-starters guide to starting your own cooperative. And I worked throughout 2018 and 2019 with an American company to develop that guide. And myself and a colleague had got all of the kind of the ducks in a row. We got all of the bowling pins stood up and ready to go and ready to launch in March 2020. And then obviously March 2020 came along, and the idea that we could set up training programs for people doing peer-to-peer learning, getting 10 people around a meeting room table, and working with them to set up co-ops and set up ethical businesses and social enterprises. The government overnight banned gatherings of over 6 people. So having worked on it for well over 18 months and spent thousands and thousands of pounds licensing the deal and printing up about 5,000 of these books, suddenly it became very obvious that we weren't going to make a success of it. But again, it's one of those things that you just put down to experience. And actually, you know, it's in the end, I think that it was a useful experience to go through, because I learned a lot, and I know that my colleagues that we were working with them learned a lot as well. The one thing I'll leave you with, because I know my time's almost up, is around the work of the all-party group, the APPG, for social cooperative and community economy. One of the things we're currently doing is leading an inquiry into those business structures, into those the suitability for legislation around company formation and company governance. And there is a private members bill, which is a Lib Dem MP's private members bill, coming in July, promoting the Better Business Act, which is being promoted and being pursued through the B Corporation movement and B Lab UK. And I know it's not necessarily solely in relation to co-ops, but I do think it shares an affinity with the sector and with the movement. And so on the 4th of July, I'll be down in Parliament voting in favour of the Better Business Act. And I hope you can all offer me your support in that endeavour. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So next up, we've been talking about tech co-ops, and we would be amiss if we didn't actually speak to someone from one. So our next speaker, Richard Edwards, is from Outlandish Co-op. So it would be great, Richard, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your work.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I have some slides, so I think I'll try and share those as we go. I'm going to try and click on this. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to see people once I start sharing, so if I can't, apologies. Do people see this?
I can see it.
Oh,
There
okay.
you go. Brilliant.
Well, thanks for having me. So my name is Richard. I am one of the co-owners and co-directors or members of Outlandish Co-operative, and we are a tech agency. We're a service company. We build nice tech products for nice people, basically. And in my role, I mostly do product development work and innovation work. And there are 5 of us, members and owners, actually four member owners and 1 just employee. We're a worker-owned cooperative, and we also collaborate with about 5 freelancers on a regular basis. We make socially positive tech, as I've said, so nice things for nice people. And this is our theory of change, our mission, our goal. So essentially, we're operating and we exist to bring about a transformative approach to tech, make social impact, and do balance that work with having a positive working environment. So we're asset locked. We reinvest all of the profit that we make. We host and mentor other co-ops and businesses. But importantly, tech for us is just a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. And I'll come back to that a little bit later. We like data things. That's what we like building. So we like data-driven campaigns and websites for people like the National Education Union. This was a big project of ours, been going for about 8 years or so. A big digital data-driven campaign. We like to make grant management platforms for consortia of funders and funding groups where they can manage grant application processes, very complex kind of workflow type stuff. And we also have work on CRMs or customer relationship management software. This is one we're working on at the moment, which I'm quite proud of. It's for community energy groups. So most of the co-ops there, and helping them manage the people that they're trying to serve in their communities and help them save money, give them energy advice, and help combat fuel poverty. So we do those kind of like juicy, complicated tech projects, and we also make like content-driven websites and so on, that sort of stuff as well. We're also one of the co-founders of CoTech, which is a network of UK tech co-ops. And I say tech, but that includes everyone from agencies like ourselves to print agencies, design agencies, film, animation makers, hosting companies, and so on. I think this slide is a little bit out of date. I think we've got about 35 or 40 co-ops in the group now. And we also operate a event and co-working space in collaboration with Islington Council. We're based in London. There we put on a lot of events. We put on a lot of talks. We incubate a number of co-ops and emerging businesses and social enterprises. And we do a lot of that business mentoring work. And we have a coding school there as well. And we do a lot of things for the community. So we deliver a lot of social value. I think in the last year, it was £780,000 worth of social value for Islington Council, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's a great place to be. And if you're ever in Finsbury Park, pop in and say hello. It'd be lovely to see. But how do we do it? We do a lot of stuff and it's quite complicated. And we have a lot of like fingers and pies and a lot of different projects going on. But I think our structure really helps with that. We are very flat. We don't have any hierarchy, but we are quite organized. And if you want to think about how we do it, it's really helpful to visualize lots of circles. So this donut really illustrates how we kind of organize ourselves. So in the middle, we have the members or the co-owners and co-directors like myself. We're in the middle circle. We're making all the decisions about the business and where we're going to spend all the money, the big financial decisions we're going to make, the strategy stuff, hiring, and so on. The outermost circle here, I suppose the saucer, is the freelancers that we collaborate with. We have a long-term collaboration agreement. We work with the same people again and again. And they're also involved in some extent in making decisions about the company. And this interstitial kind of circle, which we call the outlanders, it's people who are on their path to membership. So we try and tease them into becoming members and co-owners of the business. And if a freelancer is interested in doing that, then they'll take on more responsibility for making decisions about strategy and finance and so on. Up until recently, they were still freelancers, but this is changing and to do with a number of different factors, which I'll explain in a minute, mostly challenges that we faced. Another way of viewing the structure of our business is another bunch of circles, which is that every business function exists as a circle or a team. So we have the business development, we have finance, people, HR, tech, and so on. And that's a group of people who come together and they make decisions. They're very autonomous, they're self-empowered. But there's a few members who always sit on each of those circles. So I sit on biz dev and I sit on design, for instance, and somebody else may sit on events and people. So there's still kind of that flow of information, but there's not a sort of vertical hierarchy. And it works quite well. We have slimmed down a bit recently, so it's kind of changing in its structure, but that's basically the principle. I'll talk a little bit about what it's like being a tech co-op. I think probably no surprises to people on the call, but it's fantastic. I love it. My personal experience is the best place I've ever worked. I really like the fact that we co-design with the people that we're trying to serve. So we really are engaging with the community. We're doing a lot of collaborative work. We do a lot of people getting the community into our co-working space. Another really important thing for me is that we practice sociocracy and consent-based decision making. So basically checking if a decision is good enough for now and safe enough to try. And if we can agree that it's good enough and safe enough, it's not perfect, but it's okay, then we move forward with it. And that aligns really well with a tech co-op. And whether you're an agency or a product or a platform co-op, then that's probably quite a good thing to encourage considering adopting that. It allows us to move quickly and it aligns with very self-empowered teams. And obviously being a co-op, there's a reduced power. There still is power dynamics, but there's reduced power dynamics and we have a lot more flexibility of work. We are actually all on 0-hour contracts or equivalents, apart from one of us who's on a set number of hours per week. They're a new person we've hired recently. But that works out quite well for us because we can, there's lots of work for us to do essentially. But what have been the challenges in developing Outlandish? So Outlandish has been going for, I want to say 12, 15 years. It was an LLP before it became a proper co-op. It was functioning like a co-op, but it transitioned into being a co-op probably about 8, 9 years ago. I joined just afterwards. And I would say that one of the challenges that we have right now in developing it, Patrick, you mentioned it earlier, I think was the impact of the pandemic and the economy and what it means for work and the situation around work. So we found that a lot of people now are transitioning to working part-time, or they might have 2 jobs on. And for us, it's become quite a challenge to, especially on that outer circle, that donut saucer, the freelance collaborators, getting them to step into the co-op and becoming owners of the business with us. It feels quite risky taking on that legal responsibility. There's a lot of flexibility in being a freelance. And for us, that's quite hard for us to grow the membership. And we have actually found that having a lot more freelancers and fewer members can become quite difficult. And it introduces all kind of funky, power dynamics, and you feel like the type of co-op you are is changing, but you haven't consented to it being that kind of, to having that kind of change and that structural change. So that's been quite a big thing for us and over the years. And we have slimmed down as well because of the economy, and there's not a lot of kind of the juicy projects that we want on at the moment, which I'll talk about in a second. So that has meant the way that we practice being a co-op has had to change a little bit as well in the business decisions we make. The other big issue that we face as a company is it's very hard as a co-op to get into public sector supply chains. I know that's very true of any business, but it's quite hard for us especially. And that ranges from the small things such as people don't understand what a cooperative is, and you don't understand what the added value they might get from working with a co-op. And also some functional things. Computer says no when you're trying to say what kind of organizational entity you are, and they don't accept you as a co-op. That's another thing. I'll come back to this point as well about what government and local government can do differently to help us. That's my next point, really. So what can be done by central and local government to support people like us? I think the first thing I want to talk about is platform co-ops. So I'm quite interested in platform co-ops. I've been working with the Unfound team and helping think about platform co-ops. For me as a product person, I think a platform co-op or even a platform fundamentally operates as a marketplace. It has this marketplace dynamic. Okay, so you have supply and demand going on there. And for a marketplace, in order to function properly, it needs ownership of that supply, or as much ownership as possible. For example, if you you're a florist and you want to start a platform co-op in Scotland, for instance, your customer who lives in Inverness, if they come onto your platform co-op and they want to order some flowers, they probably want the florist in Inverness. They're not going to be happy to know that their closest co-op is in Aberdeen. And so as a platform, you need to have as many co-ops in Scotland as you possibly can using your platform, and many florists in Scotland as you possibly can. So you need to have that scale, and that is really, really hard to do. I think Patrick and Rosie both mentioned this. So, you're doing a lot of the delivery of the work, you're fulfilling orders and you're trying to grow the platform co-op and get more people on board. And that's really, really difficult to do unless you have investment. And that comes to the issue about the difficulties in getting investment in a cooperative structured business, and that is potentially why the public sector has to there has to be some change to have more investment from them, because the return on that investment absolutely is social value. So I think that's quite a specific thing about platform co-ops. All platforms struggle with that, but co-ops they face an extra challenge in achieving that scale. The other kind of thing that I think can be done is basically changing what the view of tech is. So there's a lot going on around AI at the moment. Previously, it was blockchain and augmented reality and Bitcoin and virtual currencies and things like that. And that's always presented as the solution. So the technical solution is the solution, but tech isn't the answer. So all tech is fundamentally human, and tech is really about people and relationships between people and connections. Now, where co-ops come in, and tech co-ops true, but it's all true for all co-ops, is the way that we work through being collaborative and having that collaborative practice at our core, and then democratized decision making. I believe it really increases social cohesion through the work of doing the work. So it's not just about the technical thing that gets delivered at the end, the AI powered, whatever it may be, or whatever. It's about the working practice, the people that you do meet and get involved in along the way. And so you're delivering value through that process. I would really like, in that case, to see that process recognized through tender portals and procurement practices. So having social cohesion gains as a measurable part of procurement decision making, because I think co-ops are really well placed to do that. And if we could be scored an extra few % on any scoring criteria, that will help us, win some more contracts, get on approved supply lists, and win some big, juicy tenders. But it's the kind of thing that we need to support ourselves as a business. So anything that can be done on that would be absolutely wonderful. And the other thing I think that co-ops struggle with is this. So this is a quote. I went to the Worker Co-op weekend recently, and we did a finance skills share. And one of the things I heard from many people was about, I suppose it was a reluctance to think about margins on work and to think about paying the members of the co-op for the hard work of finding work and running the business during the lean times. And this was a quote from someone there. They said, we're exploiting ourselves, essentially. And I think there are a number of reasons. Sometimes the things think about margins can feel like a dirty word, but we need a margin. We charge a margin at Outlandish because we pay people for writing briefs and hunting out proposals, so hunting out tenders and things like that. We pay people for the work of doing the admin. And some of the co-ops that come through Space 4, they purely focus on delivering the work. And so if they win a project, great, but when they don't have a project, they're in a difficulty. And when they do win a project, finding the next piece of work is a secondary concern. So they really, really struggle. So what I think can be done is helping small co-op members with finance training, business management skills, and doing that and helping them realize that, thinking about margins, thinking about sustainability, they are not dirty things to be thinking about, and they're vitally important, and actually understanding what the language is around that too. And I think I wanted to finish on an opportunity. So one of the things I hear quite a lot at the moment in various forums and chatter is about sort of social impact, social positive organizations are worried about, big US proprietary tech reducing their support because it's politically not attractive. So, for instance, Amazon provided a lot of hosting credits or funding, for instance. Google provided a lot of like discounts, and lots of big US proprietary tech provides a lot of discounts to charities and co-ops and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of discussion about technical sovereignty and owning your own tech. And I think co-ops, because of our connection to open source technologies, and we believe in open source, we believe in sharing knowledge and democratic decision making. I think we're really well placed to get involved in that process of supporting people transition to more open source, democratically owned technologies and starting things like platform co-ops and whatever they may be. So I think that, yeah, something to consider. And there's a particular example I wanted to draw attention to, which is LocalGov Drupal. So LocalGov Drupal, it's not an outlandish thing. It's by another one of the co-ops in our network called Agile Collective. Essentially, it's helping local governments around the UK use Drupal as a content management system to power their websites. And it's a consortium of suppliers who are doing the build and the delivery of services around this, and councils who are actually using it. And it's a very democratic decision-making process about the things that get developed and which are the priorities for the product roadmap and so on and so forth. So this is a good example of transitioning away from proprietary website tech to something which is more open source and is more democratically owned and move forward. And that's me. I think that was about 8-9 minutes. I didn't have my clock up. But yes, thank you very much for having me. And if you want to talk about any of these things, this is me, and we are in Finsbury Park, and we love meeting people. So pop on down.
Jeremy, thank you so much. Brilliant. So now we are moving on to questions. So just a reminder for everybody in the chat and everybody on the call, if you would like to ask any questions, you can either raise your hand to ask them in person, and I'll ask you to unmute, or you can pop them in the chat to me and I can read them out if you don't want to appear on camera. So we've had a couple through already. People haven't put exactly who they're aimed at, so I'll allow any of our speakers to put them through. So the first one is touching a little bit on what you just said. It came in before you said it, Richard, so you've almost half answered it already. But someone has put in around what are the roles that co-ops could play in the development of AI, and whether it is ethical for co-ops to use AI as it currently stands. And then, so that might be something you want to speak about a little bit more. I'll do questions in rounds just to make it a little bit easier. So that could be something you want to come back to, Richard, and also our other speakers as well. And then I think this one came in a little bit when Rose was speaking about creatives, that it's on the video game industry. So as the video game industry is, I didn't know this, apparently bigger than the film industry and the music industry combined. It's one of our biggest industries. What more can we do to have more co-ops in that big British export we have there as well? So maybe if we start on AI and then move into video, and then just a reminder for anyone to raise their hands or put messages in the chat if they'd like to answer more questions. Thanks.
Shall I take the AI one? Oh, such a good question. It's really good, and it's a really difficult one to answer. Do I think it's ethical for cooperatives to use AI? I think we're asking ourselves this in outlandish. I'm of the opinion that you need to have a policy when it comes to AI. Because it's coming in, people are just using it. People may take the transcript of this call and run it through an AI, for instance, or they might just start using it within the scope of their work to generate an image very, very quickly. So it will creep in if you don't have a policy and you might take a stance on it. I think we have to recognize that AI is quite extractive in terms of its training of the data, and the people who are being paid to do that training of identifying images and so on. It has all these issues to do with copyright associated with it. It demands a huge amount of energy and water, and energy could be diverted. I hear scary stats about how much energy in Ireland, renewable energy, is going towards powering data centers for primarily for AI usage. I think that if you're considering using AI, you need to look very, very carefully at what the inputs you're putting into an AI tool are and the outputs that come out at the other end. If you're using an AI just to pass a video and produce a transcript, then you may want to, that may be acceptable and ethical usage for you. If you are about to use an AI tool which looks at people's faces and gives you a probability that they're going to do X or commit a crime or whatever it may be, that is there's a very clear disconnect between the input and the output, and that is very, very, for me, ethically dubious. And yes, and equally, if you're asking it to generate things in this, if you're asking it to generate an image, for instance, that may be ethically acceptable for you. If you're asking it to generate an image in the style of a contemporary artist, then that may be ethically not acceptable because it's being it's extracting things from that artist and it's copyright. It's drawing very, very heavily on copyright. So my short answer is it's very, very complex. But I think if you're considering it, you have to break it down onto all the different little use cases and assess each of those individually and push the boundaries on each. You can't adopt a binary yes or no. I'm very much a Luddite when it comes to AI.
They're really interesting. I don't know if any of our other speakers want to jump in on AI before we move on to video gaming.
Yeah, I'll get. Oh, sorry, Google.
You go first, Gwen.
Well, I was just going to directly respond to Richard as is more on the innovation end rather than the Luddite end, because I do think the genie's out of the bottle, and I think what we're at risk of as a movement is not being at the table in the conversations. We actually need to use it to understand it, to actually drive those ethics. So there's no cooperatives on the government's AI panels in the previous Parliament, and so yeah, I do think we have to be in the process. We did, on your point about policy, Richard, we did a member survey and 80% of members didn't have a policy. And people are using it and they don't know they're using it. So we're doing a whole piece at Co-operatives UK where we're workshopping with AI experts to kind of get a policy position, not just for us, but to share with our members as well. And so far, it's farming as an assist, not replace, when it comes to the workforce. So that you can remain competitive in your sector. Because I think that's the Luddite problem, that you won't be competitive and then you'll go out of business, and then that's not going to help anybody. But as you say, it's really complex. So we're working through it, and we'll be happily sharing our policies and advice within the next year. Thanks.
I'll just quickly come in on the Luddite issue. Right? The original Luddites would not have destroyed their machinery and rioted had they been working in a cooperative in the first place. So I think we've got a kind of a solution embedded in the model and the movement in any case, that if you've got a cooperative that's running AI models and is involved in that tech sector, they are going to have the interests of the people at heart that we want them to have the interests of.
Well, and I don't know if any of you want to comment on the question of the role of co-ops in the video game industry in the UK.
Happy to pick this up for two reasons. One, I do come out of the entertainment business, and I've done work in the video gaming industry, and I mean, it's back to the AI piece around intellectual property rights and the exploitation of those. Intellectual property is heavily exploited in the gaming industry because the way the gaming industry approach things like music and creativity development was to employ people and just take the ownership rights, basically. So it's a really different field to a lot of other creative areas. And I'm very excited to say that on Friday, I go to Japan to meet with some of our Japanese worker co-ops who are working in the gaming industry to look at exactly this subject matter, because along with, like Richard said, a lot of the tech and AI, there is a role for cooperatives to make it fair and ethical, but we've got to be mindful of managing that process. So yeah, I will be reporting back.
Good thing. I had to check at first whether that question had come from one of my colleagues who's been campaigning with us to have a campaign on the role of video games, the video gaming industry in the UK, and how kind of co-op models relate. So it's something I didn't know much about until he gave me a little education on it. It was really interesting, and kind of like how large it is and the impact that it kind of like has on our creative industries economy. But brilliant. So I'm gonna do the same again and do I just can see that we've only got a 9 minutes left. So I'm going to take this in rounds of 3 for the people who have their hands up. And if you can keep the questions quite short, that would be appreciated, just so that we can get in as many as possible, because I've also got some that have come through in the chat as well. So I think in order, I will take them as they came in, which I think the first hands were Gregor. I'm going to take you, you take your ability off mute.
Yes, I want to ask about product, the price. How can get success the company when they customer they spend a lot of money for product, and why the structure is focused on company but about price is not focused? This question.
Thank you very much. And then I'll take a question from Andrew Jenkins, please.
Well, thank you very much. I belong to a neighbourhood forum in Nottinghamshire, and we are currently doing a community energy feasibility study with some financial support from the Midland Net Zero Hub. Most community energy initiatives use the format of a community benefit society. I found it quite difficult to understand whether that really is a cooperative or not. The Midland Hub told us it is a cooperative, but I read other things and discover that it's defined separately. Is the difference important? Should we just follow that road, or should we try to explore it more and move towards a cooperative in a more defined direction? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And I'll take one from Councillor Rudy Schmidt.
Hi, thanks, Georgia. Thanks, everyone, so much for tonight. I've actually just been made a cabinet advisor in Lewisham on the cooperative economy, so this is really timely for me, and it's really exciting. And we're starting to bring together ideas and make a vision of what that will look like in Lewisham. We've got a really strong creative sector, and we're quite lucky to have Goldsmith University. And incidentally, they've actually got quite a sizable AI research department. But in my conversations with them, their research is not necessarily as focused. So
Yeah.
my question is, what can credit unions play more of a role in financing cooperatives, and what can we do to enable them to do that? And secondly, how do we get more involved with the APP?
Amazing. Your signal came back just in time to get your question in, which was perfect. That would be if we could have some answers on that round. So that was on pricing structures, on the role of community benefit societies, and about the role of mutuals and the APPG. So I don't know if you want to take that one, that last one first, Patrick, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I know time's short, so I'll just address that and I'll address it directly. All the meetings of the all-party group are held online, and we send out invitations for people to dial in. Do we still say dial in for Zoom calls? I'm going to say dial in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do them as webinar formats, and the last one we did, which was Monday of last week, we had about 120 people from across the cooperative and social enterprise sectors watching what we were doing, and it's a way of engaging, it's a way of ensuring democracy and transparency there. I am just trying to find how you sign up for the next one. I am failing, but I will put this in the chat whilst other questions are being answered, and we can get those details across to you.
Oh, you're on mute, Georgia.
You never get all the way through one of these without it happening at least once. Rose, I don't know if you want to come in on community benefit societies, and you might also have some thoughts on the pricing structure stuff as well.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Co-operatives UK absolutely recognises CBSs as cooperatives. It's a challenge within the energy sector because of the way the FCA regulate around returning energy to the customer, and it's quite a complex response. So what I'm going to suggest is that you go to our advice team, and Georgia can share, I'll put it in the chat, but our advice team will take the call with you on the detail, because they're all kind of different as well. It depends how you do it, but yes, absolutely, we recognise community benefit societies as cooperatives for the benefit of the community as its members. And I just would say as well for Rudy on credit unions, it's not a one-size-fits-all with the credit unions. So in Greater Manchester, for example, credit unions have come together to and have changed some of their rules to be able to support small business. So yes, they can, but not all credit unions rule books allow loaning to businesses. But more to the point is that issue around the size of the investment that's needed. Again, there's opportunity going forward, but I think Co-op Exchange might be the way to go forward with AI and tech. And again, you can drop me a note and I'll tell you a little bit more about Co-op Exchange and do some introductions. Thanks.
Mutes. There we go. And Richard, I don't know if you would like to come in on any of those, but also I will throw one at you from the chat as well. Bryn has just asked, which might be an interesting question for you, if you think that there are any obligations the government could impose on big tech platforms to make things easier for tech co-ops.
Well, certainly on the pricing thing, I'll have a go at it. It's a really pricing is notoriously complex and complicated, and you'll probably get it wrong whether you're a co-op or not a co-op. Any business is very difficult to work out what your pricing is. And you have to start with at some point and then move forward from there. Certainly, I can say we aim to charge, I think, a 50% margin on the work that we do. We're a service agency, so we have our costs for doing the work and paying the people, and we try and aim for 50% margin on a project, because that can then be reinvested into actually running the community space, for instance, and doing or helping a charity who don't have much money to start their first digital product. We can give them some of that money. So that's kind of what we aim for. We don't always make 50%. Sometimes it's less than that, but it's incredibly difficult. We also generally we're not all paid equally, unlike autonomic that Rose, you mentioned. We all have slightly different rates based on the kind of work that we do, but we take a broad slice across that and then try and aim for a certain margin on top. And the other question I have forgotten. Would you mind just telling me?
It was on, is there any obligations the government can put on big tech to make life easier for tech co-ops like yours?
If cooperatives could be eligible for instance, if there's a software as a service, some sort of tool that you use online, often they have discounts for charities and non-profits, but it would be nice if they offered discounts for cooperatives as well. Often we find that we're not eligible for that, and sometimes it could be as much as 50%. So things like that would be very useful for co-ops starting, especially if they need to use a service. And a co-op maybe has lots of volunteers. Maybe you're a community energy group, you've got lots of volunteers who work part-time, and they all need to pay for access to a tool. So if they're only using it 2 days a week, it seems unfair for them to be paying full price. So a discount for a co-op would be fantastic.
Right, unfortunately, because we've still got quite a few questions remaining, we are out of time. And consider I'm not usually the person who chairs these events. I will not go down with my colleagues as the person who can't chair to time. So I'm going to call it here. But just a couple of reminders for all of our members who are in here. One, if you haven't managed to get a question answered or you've had anything to follow up, do send them into our inbox at community@party.coop, and I can forward them on to our wonderful speakers as well. And if you'd like to request any of the slides that you've seen today, we can forward those on as well. Please, this is a big reminder that our member-led policy consultation, which one of the topics of which is on the future of the co-op economy, closes this Sunday. So if you haven't already made a submission, remember that you can make a submission as an individual member. You don't have to answer every question if you don't have an opinion on everything, or you don't feel like you're knowledgeable enough about every question. We're really interested in your lived experience. If you've got any thoughts or feelings to share, please do. And you can also make a submission as an individual member, even if you've already been part of making a submission as a branch or as part of our equalities networks. This is also a very quick reminder that if you are a youth, which as the Co-Party defines is age 30 and under, sadly I don't think cut anymore, there is a meeting starting right now on the youth submission to our policy process. So if you would like to join that, please do. We'll be back next week to be talking about everything that we're up to in Parliament at the moment, with our General Secretary Joe Fortune and our Head of Politics Caitlin Prowell. So if you've ever seen those two interact together, that'll be a banger of an event. So please do join us for that one. We'll be sending out the invite tomorrow. And yeah, I hope you have a great evening. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful speakers. And yeah, don't forget about that policy process, and have a lovely evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.